So today I'm going to talk about cost management, and specifically cost management of cloud-based services and cloud-based environments. I think a lot of organizations today, as they're making that move to consume cloud-based services, they're seeing increased costs. When I first made that move, I was exactly the same. I saw growth, I saw costs increase constantly. And it wasn't until I actually understood fully what was driving that and the techniques and tools that I could apply to manage that cost better for the organization and drive costs down, did I start to learn how to adapt and how to manage that properly. Today I'm going to talk about the tools and techniques that I applied and how you can apply these within your organization to maximize the cost saving opportunities that come with cloud-based services. My name's Chris Buxton, and I help organizations make the most of their data and technology enabled opportunities. So one of the challenges in all of this is that IT teams in the past have been very good at hiding growth. Each year, for the same spend, we're able to purchase increased storage, increased disk capacity, increased server performance for the same amount of money. And it's that there's been hiding a lot of the growth and increasing costs for organizations. As we move to cloud, that hiding place is gone. So it's uncovering a lot of the growth impacts in technology, in data that organizations are facing. And if they're not able to manage that growth, they are seeing increased costs. Cloud, though, presents a number of techniques and how we can manage this, but we have to think differently about technology, and we have to think differently about how we're going to budget and manage and make decisions and choices around the technology environment that we employ. So the way we make choices and the way we manage costs within a cloud-based environment is a complete paradigm shift to the traditional way of running an IT shop. So in our old model, IT spend was largely a sunk cost. Once you committed to running a system for a period of a year or less than a year, there wasn't really any saving from turning that system off or not using it to its fullest extent. In cloud-based environment, we have choices constantly. We make decisions on a daily or even hourly basis of whether we want to incur a cost because it's a consumption-based model. And that is a complete paradigm shift in the way that we think about services. No longer are they we install once and then the measure of success is 100% availability. In cloud-based environment, the measure of success is an efficient cost base, and that service is available and optimized for the period that the user wants to use it. But to enable this, we have to think about the characteristics of a cloud-based environment, because I think there's a number of services out there that describe themselves as cloud-based, but they're really not. So two of the key fundamental characteristics of a cloud-based service that are really important when we're thinking about cost is the on-demand service and the ease of scalability. So these two come together to allow us to manage cost to a very fine-grained detail. The on-demand service basically means that service, a consuming organization can consume that service without having to go through an intermediary, without a setup process and all these other aspects. And the scalability means that the organization can scale up, and more importantly for cost management, down on demand. So one of the first things I think for organizations really to understand and make some changes around their operating environment is understanding ownership and decision making around cost optimization. In the old world, everything was about ownership and budget management. In the new world, it's actually the practitioner, it's the people that can make the impact. They're the ones that we need to empower and enable them to make choices on behalf of the organization. In the old world, we would have committees and groups that we would have to go through to make any changes. And the first time I moved into this environment and we started to look at cost optimization, we found we were losing weeks waiting for somebody to make a decision. And in that time, we were incurring costs that was completely unnecessary. So when we look at the characteristics of cloud, that ability to make decisions quickly and have an impact immediately is really important, because that is the optimized characteristics of cloud. And if you as an organization don't follow that path and create an environment where people are empowered to make decisions on your behalf quickly, then you will never get a cost saving out of cloud. It just won't happen. What you're likely to see is increased costs constantly, because the challenge in all of this is that organizations traditionally are incredibly good at bringing on board new services, but they're incredibly slow at turning them off and getting rid of old services when they no longer need them. And it's that decision-making process that really has to be accelerated, because cost optimization is all about turning things off. It's all about optimizing so that you're consuming services when you need them and you're turning them off when you no longer do. So the first thing I did in my organization was change the way that we thought about budgets and change the way we empower people. I created the ability for technical teams to make decisions around cost. I distributed budgets to the technical delivery teams so that they were directly responsible for the cost of delivering those services. But also they were the ones that knew about the utility, they knew about the capability, they knew about what the business needed, and were able to make choices on behalf of the organization to optimize the cost base. Now, through doing that, we were able to make significant savings really quickly. Now, part of what we have to look at when we move to this empowerment model is how do we recognize and reward the right behavior? And part of the way that I achieved that was to look at what we did with the underspends. Now, what I was able to do was allow the organization to keep that within their budget. And they were able to use that then to provide flexibility. So when the business needed increased capacity, increased growth, the business unit, they had budget available so they could accommodate that increased need. They could use it to support innovation. They could use it to support staff development and training and other activities. And through that, they were rewarded and they were recognized for the savings opportunities that they were able to take advantage of. So one of the first mechanisms I think that organizations can employ is getting rid of the spare capacity. In the old model, it would take several weeks. If you needed to grow capacity, whether that's storage, CPU, memory, if you needed to increase the capacity of infrastructure, it could take you several weeks. So organizations used to keep, and still do keep, spare capacity on every server just to make sure they could handle any growth. And that routinely was between 10 and 20% of capacity. Well, in a cloud-based environment, it's on demand. You can scale, so you don't need to have capacity sitting there idle just in case you need it. But through empowering the teams can understand that. The teams can look at their servers, they can look at their infrastructure, they know what the business is doing, and they could optimize the infrastructure accordingly. So empowering teams to look at their servers, look at the infrastructure, look at the resource utilization, and then make choices about what they needed and what they didn't. They were able to optimize their servers quite considerably. And there was multiple phases in that, because the first phase was simply around storage. We could look at what spare capacity was in storage. We don't need it, so we could just trim that right down, leave about 1% for growth. And then if the business started to grow more than that, we could add storage to it through the cloud provisioning capabilities. That was the easy part. The harder part was then putting in resource utilization monitoring using open source software like Nagios and those other capabilities, really to enable the technical teams to look at CPU and memory usage on servers and then optimize those servers based on what they need. Because a lot of times organizations will set up their servers based on the recommended specification from the software vendor, but software vendors will invariably go to the highest level that they think they need. And a lot of that will go underutilized. So organizations able to look at their resource utilization and drop that down to the level that they need. But this is where empowerment of the team became quite important, because if they went too far or the business needed a particular function that required an increased capacity, they were on the shop floor. They could make that choice very quickly and they could support the business in what they need. So if they did start to see issues, they could put more resource in very quickly. But more importantly, as that use dropped off, they could take it away again. So they could adjust those settings in near real time, really, based on what the business was trying to do and what the organization was trying to achieve. So another area to look at when we think about server capacity and this, the scalability and the on-demand service, is the working day for an organization. A lot of organizations are not working 24 hours a day. And even if they are providing services to the customer 24 hours a day, that's not the bulk of their infrastructure. It's not the bulk of their environment. So if you think in a normal year, weekends, public holidays, out of hours, these are all times where people aren't using those IT services. I think in IT, we've got into that mindset that our true measure of success is 100% availability 24 hours a day. But the reality is, it doesn't matter. The only measure that matters is that that service is available when the customer wants to use it. So having a service available in the middle of the night when nobody wants to use your service is a pointless measure. So changing that mindset, and that is a paradigm shift I think that organizations need to make. The measure of success is not 5 nines. The measure of success is 100% availability when the customer wants to use that service. And when we think about that, we start to see all of this time during the year when that service is not being used. Now in cloud-based services, whether it's scalability or whether it's about on-demand, we can turn things off. We can shut these services down so we're not consuming those services over that shutdown period. The problem is, I think though, in technical terms, a lot of organizations have set their organization up to be available 5 nines. We don't routinely reboot systems. We don't routinely shut them down and start them up again. And that's why organizations struggle with patching and those other activities that require us to restart services, because our services aren't built to be restarted in that way. So organizations have to learn how to do this, and they have to go through pain. They have to adjust their systems. But I will guarantee you, once you've done it a few times, the technical team will have automated everything that needs to be automated, and those services will start to become more resilient, and they will find the issues that stop them being routinely rebooted, and they will become better and more resilient because of it. And that will improve your security posture, it will improve your cost base, and a whole bunch of other benefits as well. But the important thing is, start turning off things that you're not using. But I think really the really important message today is to manage cost in a cloud-based environment. It is all about making choices. In our old world, our choices were once a year. In our new world, our choices are every hour. And if you don't empower and enable an organization that can make those choices, you will never be able to optimize your cloud-based environment. You're taking all of the benefit of that flexible, adaptive environment that is able to scale up and down on demand, and you're basically throwing it out. So I'm going to be releasing more videos around how organizations can make the most of cloud-based services and be more adaptive to respond to their changing customer and their technology environment. If you want to hear more, click on the subscribe button. And if you want to be notified, click on the bell. My name's Chris Buxton, and I help organizations make the most of their data and technology enabled opportunities.